Welcome everybody to the June 28th, 2021 peak meeting. And that's the Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee meeting. This is our first official hybrid meeting where all legislators. Uh-oh.
There we go.
So we're testing it out.
All right, should be good now.
Okay. So this is our first meeting, so I appreciate everybody's flexibility. And so first off, I'd like to ask if we have any public comment for today's meeting. Not that we know of. Okay, great. Any changes to the agenda that anybody has? Okay, thank you. Oh, and also welcome to everybody in person, and then welcome everybody on the screen on the Zoom. So thank you everybody for coming. And Shauna, who's in some remote
tropical paradise.
I'm in Rochester.
Think of tropical paradise. Okay. And so let's start with then move on to the minutes approval. So we have minutes of the May 24th meeting. Can someone move that? Deborah, seconded by Amanda. Any comments, edits, corrections, quandaries of any kind? Okay, let's vote on these. Dave?
Yes.
Amanda? Oh, do you have something? Oh, we could just raise our hands to vote now. Okay, all those in favor, committee members, raise your hand. That's unanimous. I'm not used to seeing people in person. Thank you very much for reminding us, Amanda.
Okay. Often she has to be retrained.
Right. Dave said we're going to get retrained. I had to parallel park the other day and I was like, oh, I haven't parallel parked in a year. That's another thing I have to relearn. Okay. I don't really have anything for the chair's report. I just wanted to we have a lot of things on the schedule today. So I just wanted to do a kind of a quick overview of at least mention the two things that I think we'll be spending possibly the bulk of our time on. And that would be the presentation from the case board, the Green Workforce Report. And then the very last thing, the UN Energy Program presentation and discussion. So I think the other things will be fairly quickly. So we'll move on next to the county administrator's report. And we have Lisa Holmes here, acting administrator.
Thanks, nice to see you all in person. I don't have too much to report on. I mentioned it in the weekly email updates, and I know it was mentioned last week at HED, so you're aware about the Public Service Commission cutting our airport geothermal project for the non-pipes alternative.
Right, that was 1.5 million that they didn't approve.
Yeah. So so planning department is going to be requesting a reconsideration on that. In our news in administration, we've been in the process of interviewing and have made an offer for the budget director position. We're still in the final stages for budget analyst. So more information on that when we as we progress.
Thank you. Any questions for Lisa? Okay, thank you very much for that report. And then we have Planning and Sustainability Department, Commissioner of Planning Sustainability Report. Katie, do you have anything for us as far as the overall report?
Yeah, I wanted to take a couple minutes, if you wouldn't mind, to introduce our two new staff members to
Absolutely.
the committee. First of all, I have Susan Lanfried, who started on June 1st. She's going to be our senior planner focused on housing issues primarily. And I've asked Susan to say a few words about her background as a way of introduction to you all.
Susan, you're on
your
mute.
mic isn't working.
How about that? Okay. Good afternoon. I'm coming by way of Macon, Georgia, and then previous to that, Sumter, South Carolina, where I had been working in regional planning for about the past 5 years. And before that, I was actually a teacher for about 7 years. So I am excited to get into the nuances of housing and really work to improve the prospect and affordability of housing in the county.
Welcome.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Susan. Starting on June 14th, made it through his first pay period, is Terry Carroll, our new Chief Sustainability Officer. Terry, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, hello everyone. Many of you probably remember me. I used to work with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Tompkins County. I would help municipalities on clean energy actions. So it's exciting to be able to work with Tompkins County, you know, where I live, and help really pursue the ambitious goals that we have.
Terry?
Thank you, Terry. The other points I just wanted to mention is we were unsuccessful in our last round of recruiting for a senior planner focused on energy and kind of interacting with the community on energy and climate change. So we will be re-advertising that position probably in mid-July. But it's also an opportunity for Terry to be able to be in on the recruiting and hiring as well. So that will be good. I want to let everyone know that I am going to be out of the office. I have to have wrist surgery. So I'll be out of the office from July 26th through August 23rd. Megan has kindly and ably said she will step in and lead the department in my absence, but wanted to make sure you all were aware of that. In terms of the NYSEG non-pipeline alternative work, Terry is working closely with various other county staff members to come up with a compelling argument against why they should reconsider their decision on that funding. He already has a meeting set up with the Department of Public Service Commission people and is reaching out to NYSEG to speak with them as well. The county, we are working with departments on 7 electric vehicle purchases, one with facilities. They should be soon getting a plug-in hybrid EV RAV4, and working with the Sheriff's Department to get 5 hybrid EVs and 1 plug-in hybrid for their fleet, as well as all the charging solutions that need to support those vehicles. And just one other note, I think you were all copied on information, but last week was a great event to launch the Blue Way Trail. The Lieutenant Governor was here, and it's a great amenity. It's 12 sites right now, linking paddling resources around the entire lake. It's a great opportunity for tourism in our area. So that's it for me, Annie. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Katie. And I wanted to say a hearty welcome again to Susan and Terry. Any questions or comments for Katie? All right, thank you very much, Katie, for the report. Let's see, then we have the harmful algal bloom. I think we have, there's Darby right on cue. Darby, would you like to take that away?
Take it away. Yes, indeed. Thank you. A couple months ago, back in April, I presented the draft harmful algal bloom strategy, and we put that out for comment for the end of April into the month of May. And then we received about a handful of comments on that and incorporated those into the document. So nothing new was really added, just some small changes and some clarifications. And so that document was, or the comments were reviewed by the HABS committee, which is a really great group. Amanda participates when she's available to be there. And we were able to finalize that document and present it to the Water Resources Council last week. And so that committee, or that council, approved and endorsed the HAB strategy. So at this point, this is informational. We're not asking for any action of peak, but just want to let you know that that strategy has been finalized and approved. And there are a couple wheels in motion on several of the action topics already. And we're going to hit the ground running with getting many of those implemented in the next several years. And we'll come back and look at this again in a couple of years and see kind of like do a check-in every year, see where we are with it and what adjustments need to be made or where can we be applying for grant funding. We are possibly looking at some ditch work and possible grant application based off of the HAB strategy. So it's the finished report is in your packet. You can take a look. I don't know if anyone had any questions. I'd be happy to answer those.
That's on page 15 in the packet. If folks wanted to refer to that, does anybody have any questions or comments? Well, I think we'll have more discussion possibly on the next topic where it was maybe not quite as well written as your report on the HABs. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that and thank you for finalizing that, Darby.
Yeah, happy to wrap that up and start moving on it as well. So yeah, I can just a few pages later in your agenda packet, looks like the memo starts on page 26. We have some comments on the total maximum daily load for phosphorus for Cayuga Lake. So that we refer to as the TMDL. So I will jump into that acronym usage pretty quickly because it's too much to say, the whole entire title. And I think some of you have heard me talking about this in past meetings. So the document was released in April of this year, and we were able to get an extension on the deadline. But the goal of a TMDL is to give stakeholders guidance on how to reduce, in this case, to reduce phosphorus coming into Cayuga Lake. And then the state sets goals of targeting different measures. So here they're going to be looking at a target for chlorophyll A concentrations. And so the way that the Department of Planning and Sustainability looked at it is, how would we implement the document? How would we know what to do and where to do it, and how much would that cost, and who would be doing the implementing, and how do we know if we're making progress? And so as you'll see from we have a 4-page document of comments. And as you'll see from that, the TMDL draft does not answer those questions in a way that makes us feel confident we could move ahead and do the right projects targeting phosphorus reductions, mostly having to do with agriculture based on the loads coming from that land use. So you'll see we have a number of questions that we put there and hope that DEC can make adjustments to the TMDL before they finalize it so that we can understand it a little better. So it really focuses in on that implementation plan, which if you have any interest in reading the TMDL, that's the section 7 in the document. And then we also have a handful of comments on the impacts to the wastewater treatment facilities. And mostly there are a number of questions that could be clarified, whether, like, for example, there's some outdated information about the Cayuga Heights wastewater treatment facility. So that would be useful to know if they are close to the permit limit or not. And that document, the TMDL, should be identifying that. And then how expensive will it be for the Freeville is targeted as having some permit changes coming down the line. And so what will that mean for them? And will they be restricted on additional users or any kind of expansion? So that's some clarification that's needed. And kind of the third area is just what happens when these wastewater treatment facilities do hit their permit limits, and could they expand? Well, if they cannot expand, does that mean we would have more development being pushed into areas that do not have municipal sewer. And so what does that mean for sprawl and smart growth? And so I think they could be detailing a little bit more in their TMDL of what that looks like moving into the future. And we included in the packet the comments from the Water Resources Council, and those were draft comments. There was an additional bullet point added about pivoting from a TMDL process to what's called a 9-element plan process, which is a broader watershed planning document that looks at all pollutants, not just one, like this is just looking at phosphorus. So that was kind of an added request. But as you'll see, the history of the Water Resources Council has been to really look at the science of the lake and the monitoring that's been done, and that the connections that DEC is making in the draft TMDL are not really borne out by the science and the publications that have come out studying the lake. So the recommendation there is really that they need to relook at those issues.
Thank you, Darby. Any questions or comments? Amanda and then Deborah.
Thanks, Darby, and thanks, Katie, for working on this. I guess my question is sort of about process. So you're going to submit all this. Is the DEC going to listen to this? I mean, how likely is it that they're going to respond positively or do what we want?
I don't have much idea on how to respond to that. Yeah. And we've actually also asked for even like a revision going on. And I know that the Cuga Lake Watershed Intermunicipal Organization reached out to all of our state representatives and was able to get some response from Assemblywoman Kelles' office. And she sent a letter to the commissioner of DEC asking for a dialogue. And I know that's not going to happen during the comment period, but could that happen? Comment period ends. Could there be some discussion with the stakeholders? And I think that's kind of what's missing in this TMDL process is it's really just, here's our draft, you submit comments, when are they going to respond to it? Whereas this 9-element plan that we've talked about, that has much more stakeholder engagement and really working through each of the issues. This is, that much more strict prescriptive process.
Just follow up, like when do you have a sense of like timeline of, no, yeah.
I have it. Yeah. I mean, okay. Considering I've looked at in this process, I've been looking at other TMDLs that have come out in the last several years. And, I look at, I think it was Honeoye Lake had about 6 pages of comments. And as you might know, Amanda, just the monitoring partnership has a 30-page comment document that on top of that has a 6-page letter memo. So I think it hopefully will take them a while to get through it all.
Okay, thank you.
Deborah.
Thanks, Annie, and thank you, Darby. I have a couple of questions and comments. My takeaway from the WRC comments is that if DEC had properly measured the phosphorus in southern Cayuga Lake, we wouldn't even need a TMDL. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's, I think this goes back when it was originally listed, the south end of Cayuga Lake was listed on the 303D list, and then the 303D list says, okay, now you need a TMDL. When that was listed in 2002, we're asking for the data as part of the Water Resources Resources Council's comments to say, how did that actually get listed, and what are they basing it on? And then this phosphorus chlorophyll A connection, which is correlated in other water bodies, is not a correlation here. And there's just been multiple peer-reviewed published reports on that. And so to target phosphorus hoping for a chlorophyll A response is it's might not work.
Science.
Right. Yes.
Okay. One thing that you noted in the DPS comments is in the section on wastewater treatment facilities, you mentioned that you have no idea if the Cayuga Heights wastewater treatment facility is at capacity. My understanding from watching the mayor of Lansing work his way through the wastewater treatment and sewer and water struggles of our village is that facility was significantly expanded. It does have significantly more capacity, and they are considering further expansion and adding more. So
Right.
that's one piece of good news. And then the other thing I wanted to say was just that I think that the differing approaches that DPS and the Water Resources Council took were very nicely complementary and resulted in a fairly comprehensive overview of the draft TMDL. And I wanted to compliment the drafting efforts that went into both documents. The Water Resources Council document is significantly better researched and supported than the DEC's draft TMDL, and they should be embarrassed. But thank you to everyone who had anything to do with drafting this.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and we are aware that the Cayuga Heights plant does, I mean, it definitely meets its permit limits, but that they put some outdated data in there just is not helpful in trying to get a sense of where they are.
Thank you. Anybody else before? So I had a couple of comments. I think, Darby, you put it very nicely, very diplomatically. You're, after reading your draft comments here, I mean, there's a lot of issues just to make the report make sense and follow it, correlate to the different parts of its own report. So, I mean, there's just very basic things. And so I appreciate this well thought out response. One thing that jumped out at me is as far as like needing funding, needing direction, needing clear direction of what to do, but also funding, at the state and federal level. So those are things that we're all going to have to push for and figure out how to do that, because we can't do that just here locally. And just for transparency, the acronym BMPs is in here. I know several times I didn't see it, as people probably know, that's a thing of mine when we have acronyms, but I know for sure the DEC knows what BMPs are, so I wasn't concerned about that, but I just wanted to say it out loud. That's best management practices for anybody watching the YouTube, and I'm sure probably most people here know what that is. And just one last comment. It's mentioned on the last page about what if on the top of the last page, so it's packet page 29, number 7, right near the top. What happens if the TMDL targets are not met? And then it says the TMDL should clearly identify the federal, state, or local regulations or mandates that will be implemented for non-point sources if the TMDL is not successful. So that what I was thinking was, geez, maybe it'd behoove us if there were regulations sooner rather than later, because if we wait, how many years that we're going to wait, or they're going to wait, because I think what has been said before, our efforts now, we might not see the effects for like 20 years. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, that's just one thing that stuck out to me. So thank you very much for all of this, and a big shout out to the Water Resources Council also for making, and I know I heard, Darby, you helped them with that too, so to make such detailed comments. Anything else on this? Thank you very much, Darby.
Great, thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is, I think we have Sarah Kulada on here, the green workforce report from the Climate and Sustainable Energy Board. So we have Sarah. I presume you're going to be making this presentation for us today?
Yes. Hi.
Thank you.
Hello,
Welcome.
everybody. It's my first visit to a peak meeting, and interesting to have that happen on your first hybrid meeting. So I am prepared to give a presentation. Ellie Pfeffer was hoping to be here to carry the bulk of that because she was the lead author on the report, but she's been called into something else, and so she passed the baton to me. But I'm also hoping this is a dialogue as much. So I have her slides, and we can walk through the, like the highlights of the report. It was in the packet. I don't, just like show of hands, if you're willing to say whether you've had a chance to look at it, if you come to this discussion with any questions already. Wonderful.
It's packet page 36.
Thanks, Annie. Maybe it would be good to start with just like a little go round of what your questions are or what you'd like to get out of this time on the agenda. And then I can, screen share and go through slides as appropriate. So if anybody wanted to start with a question or comment.
Sure, I think Dan wanted to start us off with a question or comment.
Thank you. I have a few questions, and maybe the first one is actually for the committee itself. Like the first question is, what are we doing with this report? We got presented this, I don't know, maybe like 8 months ago or something like that, and I see there's no action being requested today. So I'm just curious why it's here again and what our goal is today.
That's really a great place to start. I could address that, or we could hear all the questions, and then I could go into it. Does anybody have a preference? Annie, do you want me to?
I think Deborah had her hand up. Deborah, did you want to make a comment before or after Sarah?
Yeah, I don't want to steal Sarah's thunder, but my perception might be somewhat different than hers. I mean, if you will recall, Dan, there was quite a bit of surus. There was quite a bit of surus about the report when it initially came out, largely because of the recommendations that related to the IDA. So I think this was sent back to the drawing board in no small part because of that. And I know then that Ellie and Sarah and other people who worked on this put a lot of additional time in to speak with the legislators whose noses were out of joint, to try to make this report a warm and happy place for all of us. And I congratulate them on that. So that's, I'll defer to Sarah's comments.
Sarah, before you, I just want to just add to what Deborah was saying is that I think what I recall also is that there were some parties, including the IAED, the Ithaca area,
Economic development.
Organization, so that they weren't included as much as people would have liked, and some other parties. So there was some more reaching out to people, sitting down with people to gather, more data, more collaboration. So go ahead, Sarah. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that as a lead in. And Amanda, did you want to build on it, or shall I?
No, go ahead.
Okay, great. So for context, this report was an initial effort of the Climate and Sustainable Energy Board because we had our first meeting during the first month of lockdown. We knew that economic development, economic recovery was going to be key. So we turned our attention into educating ourselves really about green job opportunities that are relevant to our geography, and what are the barriers to having enough workforce? What are the trends going on? What is the climate policy coming out of state government? And as an all volunteer board, we had a Cornell student, Ellie Pfeffer, who really, she and I kind of got the whole thing going. And then she attracted other folks from Case Board to put in work. And this really report has been a collaborative effort among 5 or 6 members. And as has been said, when it was first drafted, it was a rough draft back in the fall, I think it was, or early winter time. You know, there was still some more specificity that I think was needed, and more interconnection with economic development policies. And so indeed, people did deeper dives into the types of jobs, the skill sets needed for those jobs, and then much more work with Kurt Anderson at Ithaca Area Economic Development, data gathering that they did, and assimilating that we did into the report. So the report format is basically the same, it's just there's more depth to it. And I'll walk through some of those key highlights and like what's new. The slides focus on what are new additions from the first one you may have read. I think in terms of your question, Dan, of where do we go from here, it's a really great question. And most of us on Case are not really familiar enough with county government to know what is the next logical thing. We've been, early on, we were in a lot of conversations with Natalie Bernofsky. I've lost track now of where the strategic workforce development planning process is. I think reconnecting with that is definitely a good next step, but we're also, this has been lingering on the Case agenda, and we wanted to be able to, you know, call this a wrap basically and hand it over to others who could then maybe take some next steps towards implementation or whatever else would be needed and appropriate for county government. And I think, you know, the bigger context is to keep in mind is that the Climate Action Council and the moving forward of the CLCPA policy development is very ambitious. There's going to be a lot of sticks getting us to do what needs to be done for meeting our climate goals and what the planet needs. There's going to be some carrots that we want to be positioned for and have workforce that can implement projects that can earn those rewards. And then we've also got the Ithaca Green New Deal going on, you know, and that is a whole new thing over the last 3 months, where with the hiring of Luis Aguirre Torres, we have leadership, we have vision, and we're starting to think big. And, you know, not all green jobs are going to center in Ithaca, but a lot of them will. And so I think this workforce development piece becomes even more important in terms of what the 10-year plan is coming out of the city. So that's a little bit of context. And if there are no further comments, I'll just start sharing my screen and walking us through this. Annie, can you remind me how much time we have till the next thing on the agenda?
Let's see, it looks like we have till about 2:35.
Okay, great. That's lots of time. So I'll keep my eyes on that. Can you see the first page of the report screen here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it could be a little bit bigger though.
Okay, let's try. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, and I'm going to apologize in advance that these are a little text heavier than I would have made them, and parts may be a little difficult to read, but hopefully we can use them as a jumping off point for discussion. And like, please stop me, or I'll try to keep an eye on the tiny little screen with a raised hand. But Annie, also feel free to like literally interrupt me if you see that somebody has a question or a comment.
Will do.
Thank you. Okay, so we are, basically what we're doing here is trying to answer the question, how do we grow our green workforce? And as we're doing that, what's really important is recruiting and retaining, like we have to do both, from priority populations. And that's important to us, I think, for our values as a community, but it's also really important to getting money, because so much of the state and federal money is coming with priority for disadvantaged communities. So that's a key part of this report. And then also to be effective in moving the needle on climate change. We're talking about, in some cases, the larger commercial projects, the commercially developed projects, in addition to scaling up work at the residential, single family, low-rise residential level. So that's what we're trying to accomplish here. We did it within the framework of county emission reduction targets. We did it in the framework. I'm having, let's see, let me do that. Okay, great. So we reworked the training section of the report to really focus on what are the critical skills, what are the needs, where are the gaps in that, and then a much more narrative of model programs that we found across the state. And just continuing to list available funding and what we think could help move it all forward is the creation of a Green Jobs Training and Diversity Council, some kind of multi-stakeholder entity that would have this work be very relevant to what they do each day to day from different perspectives, as well as being a place where people can get out of their, cross their boundaries of their silos and work together. So that's sort of one half of the report is the training, and the other half has to do with IDA policies. And I'm not even going to try to read through all this text because it's just even a little too much for me. I got these slides, an hour and a half ago or so. So key occupational titles that are focused on in the report: weatherization and energy efficiency technician. And I think it's relevant to see what some of the model training programs are for that. Heat pump installers and contractors. So that's a little bit of a different angle. And definitely at the business development, sort of growing new businesses, growing contractors so that they can do more work, hire more people. It's a chicken and egg scenario of they can't grow if they can't find the people. But the heat pump programs locally and statewide are gaining steam. And so this is a very big area of need. Wind turbine service technicians is on here because while we don't have a lot of wind at the moment directly in our area, this is a very big job growth arena, and there is training available. And then forest and conservation workers are, more on that carbon sequestration side of things, and even relates to the lake water quality and some of those conversations that were going on earlier in the meeting. So these are some of the areas that the report focuses on. And then, so that's the what, this is the how. And what's really needed is focus on recruiting and leveling the playing field so that the people who have barriers to employment have the opportunity to get into these jobs and get into this sector and grow their career or grow eventually a business locally within this sector. And a lot of it relates to instilling literacy and awareness in the trade. So it's not just about what you're doing in a building, but it's the why you're doing it, why it matters, why it's in a sense a high status application or occupation. So those are some of the points in that section. Model programs we found are beginning to target populations that have been traditionally underrepresented. There's some examples, and I'll show a slide of that in a minute. And a key point is an integration between on-the-job training and in the classroom programming. And now we could even say, and online education, because there really are these, you know, it's such a hybrid world now. Partnership with community organizations who already have those ties to low-income communities is really important, because that's how you're going to recruit, and it's being informed from a cultural competency perspective that you'll be able to retain those workers, you know, to be welcoming, to be supportive of transportation needs, childcare needs, understanding what it is to be a returning citizen and have parole requirements. Like, there's just so much that a typical contractor or typical educational institution may not be aware of, but that community organizations can help kind of bridge that gap and truly make a program work. Mentorship's important, and there's that piece again about curriculums that connect literacy, environmental literacy with technical knowledge. So this is just an example, more detail. It might have been mentioned in the first version of the report, but this is more detail on the program at SUNY Ulster. I think it's called Green Careers Academy. And it is a pre-apprenticeship program that has a tie with contractors. So they've, and there's actually the utility company that is sponsoring coffee hours with contractors to build connections between their needs and the students that are coming out of this program. And it also ties in locally to the city of Kingston, which has a land bank and an Office of Community Development. So this is one of the places that we could look for ideas of what we could do here locally. Green City Workforce is based in New York City. It's an energy boot camp. This one really focuses on the literacy component, that idea, especially for young people that are so concerned for their future. This really positions the hands-on work in, you know, starting in the trade sector. They could, who knows where people will go from there, but positions it as relevant globally, but also making a difference for their neighbors within the communities in which they live. This uses the Roots of Success curriculum, which is being offered locally at present through Finger Lakes Reuse. So it's a good example program because there's a lot of tie-ins there. So I think I'm going to just stop sharing now. I feel like I'm flying blind. Before I go into that piece, let's just check in, if you don't mind, and see about questions or comments.
Thanks, Sarah. Deborah has a question.
Well, it's not a question, Sarah. It's kind of an answer to partially to Dan's question, and also some good news for you. Several of us went to a meeting at TC3 a couple of weeks ago, and TC3 is looking to institute a pilot program for micro-credentials and vocational training in addition to their academic program curricula. And they're focusing in part on green jobs. And this is something that Deb Molenhoff and Natalie Bernowski have been working together on. And the impetus for this is in no small part the Year Green Workforce Development Report. So congratulations on that. It's already bearing fruit. They will be working with local employers so that when people get through these programs, they will have a job. And they noted, along with you, that it's important to have programs that allow people to learn to earn while they learn, because a lot of these populations simply can't afford to sit in a classroom for any length of time. One of the big problems is that these micro-credential curricula can't take up more than a minimum number of class hours, and I think it's like 10 or something, without through a lengthy certification program with the state university system. So that's something we really need to address. For example, if we wanted to duplicate SUNY Ulster's program, even though it already exists, we would have to wait for this process to unfold, which is another barrier to make this happen. But what TC3 is going to try to do is make these micro-credentials stackable. So you break up a more complex curriculum into many curricula, and hopefully that will be a way around the problem. But anyhow, I wanted you to know that it's already in the works.
It's good to hear. I'm familiar with some of the workforce programs going on at SUNY Corning, SUNY, and SUNY Jamestown in particular, and working within the broader SUNY system is a challenge, and the community colleges really need as much support from local sponsors, i.e. their counties, as possible. One other piece of good news in similar vein is that BOCES is going to be offering a program this fall, put together in collaboration with Heat Smart Tompkins, which will be focused on incumbent workers. So it'll be for adult learners, not so much, the high school programs. Again, those are like a 2-year, full-on, approved by state education department type of structure, which is long and difficult to get launched. So they're doing more of a first semester, second semester approach. One is more hands-on skills for what a heat pump technician would need. And the second semester will be more technical, related to handling refrigerants. So kind of the next step up in an occupational career ladder. And it turns out that the instructor is going to be Tom Mayo, who works for the city of Ithaca as a building inspector, but happens to have worked for Renovis and have his own small business installing heat pumps, and has agreed to be the instructor. So these things are working in pieces, there's pieces and parts coming along, but I don't know that either of them are positioned to meet, for instance, NYSERDA requirements for green job funding. And so that's where putting these pieces together, also, for instance, micro-credentials at TC3 versus a course at BOCES, how does somebody who wants to get into the field know which to choose? How do they understand? How do we understand what the differences are? And how does somebody who we'd like to recruit and retain understand what the differences are? And I think that's why a council that pulls people together to sit down and share what they're doing and come up with ways to weave them together would be very useful.
Thank you, Dan. And then I had a comment.
I'm still, I didn't really get an answer to my question is what's our intention today? Because I do have lots of other questions that kind of hinge on that. What is our intention to do today?
I don't think we need to formally accept the report. I think we're just, that they're presented to us, right? Do we need to formally accept it?
Lisa might be able to enlighten us. I know that in the past, we've acknowledged, accepted, adopted. We do a whole bunch of different things that start with A.
I think you could accept it. And then if you are planning to act on any of the recommendations, further resolutions would come from that.
Right, I could see, okay, go ahead, Dan.
So, the reason I asked it is because it didn't appear from the written report that it had been updated. And then I heard some of what you said, and I saw when you put this new information on the screen, that perhaps some of those things had been addressed, but like reading through it, I remember one of the concerns was that IAED had not been consulted. And when I looked at the list of interviews in today's packet, they're still not listed. And the same with TC3, they had not been consulted and they're still not listed in here. So that's why it questions like it's not
a report or something.
It's not clear that this actually have been updated. There's unemployment statistics from July 2020. There's a bunch of things there that just don't really seem like I would be ready to accept this at this moment because it doesn't feel updated to me. And then I do have more to say after that, but I'll stop there because maybe some people want to address some of the things I just brought up.
If I could comment, I don't believe we were expecting the data to be updated, but more the crux of what I recall is more conversations, more collaboration. But if those aren't, I didn't recall that those aren't listed.
They're not.
If we, so maybe we need to check back with Ellie, who's not here. Yeah.
Right. Well, definitely Kurt Anderson at IAED has been in dialogue with Ellie, and he was given this report about a month ago. I'm pretty sure you have the latest version. It seems like an oversight that his name was not added to the list of people interviewed. He did not request any changes to any of the additions that had been made through finding his data or integrating his data. I was not part of really that side of the development of the report. But maybe I could generalize and say what I'm hearing is that you'd like to know that this is aligned in some way with Ithaca area economic development, with that organization, and that there's there's a willingness to work together to move this forward. Is that a good summary, Dan?
Sure. That was a big point that had been raised, the last time this came up. I just
wanted
to make
sure. That one I feel like is pretty easy for us to address. In terms of TC3, I know that outreach was made and a meeting did not happen ever. And I think that it's a lot of, suffering from being all volunteers on case and not having the bandwidth to pursue, to keep pushing, to keep asking, and to make something happen ourselves. But clearly things are happening, as Deb just reported. So that's to me good news. And really, as I mentioned earlier, our intention was kind of to be able to call this a wrap, pass it along, have the next organizational unit do the next thing with it that is possible.
Thank you.
Amanda?
We all know I love the rules of the legislature.
Could you read us
I'm
something from there?
going to read you Rule 10, receipt of reports. Actually, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically the legislature may vote to accept in whole or in part a report. They may vote to adopt any such report in whole or in part. Legislature may reject or refer back any report. And to accept a report means that the legislature acknowledges receipt of the report and thanks its author for it. So it's not any sort of, yes, we're going to go along with something or, anything like that. It's just basically, yes, we acknowledge this. So I'm not suggesting that we need to do any of this today. I'm also a little bit like, this is a lot of information that I haven't spent a ton of time thinking about. And there's a lot of recommendations in here, but I guess I would also want to know from my colleagues, like, what are these things we want to do? I'm not being very articulate, but it's a good report, but what are we doing with it? Like, what are our next steps? So that's the bigger discussion, I think. So.
I have one comment, Deborah. So as Sarah said, I think the next step is the Green Jobs Training and Diversity Council, because as I'm jotting down a lot of notes from reading the report and then from our discussion today, I keep thinking of more organizations that need to be included. And so a council, can work with the ones that have already been mentioned. I'll add BPI, Building Performance Institute, and they do a lot of work and certify people that do green jobs. So they already do that now in New York State. So, there's just, I'm thinking as far as the legislature as a whole, our administration, working with workforce development, our housing and economic development committee. So there's all of these different organizations and committees and that need to be included in this. And so who's going to do that? So I'm thinking if we had a council that could coordinate all this, so to see what everybody's doing, because if I'm glad that TC3 is doing something, but who's then coordinating? For instance, are they working with BPI? Because maybe BPI could do certification. Deborah?
I think what we do with it is a separate issue from accepting it. I don't expect that a bunch of uncompensated, very, very busy volunteers is going to coordinate this with every possible organization in the county. That's the county's job, or Natalie's job, or TC3's job. I think that, as I understand it, we're about to lose Ellie. She's leaving Cornell and going down to University of New York. I can understand where, as her being the principal author of this, the case board would like to pass this on to the legislature, which is all we can ask them to do. And we can do with it what we want. Yeah, that's all I've got to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to know, however, that Ellie did work extensively with Kurt Anderson.
Right.
And I know specifically that when we met with TC3, Deb Molenhoff and Natalie talked about this green workforce report that came out of Case. That was part of the impetus for this new pilot program they want us to fund. So this thing has made the rounds. If we're concerned that the list of interviewees isn't complete, then we can ask that be changed. But I don't expect, and I don't think we can reasonably expect that Case is going to do any more work on this.
Right. I know Ellie presented at the labor subcommittee for the IDA, and it has been discussed thoroughly there. So are we at a point where people would entertain accepting this? Now, if we accept this today, would then we also ask the legislature to accept it, or would just be accepted here at this committee?
What do the rules say?
What do the rules say? Lisa,
Well,
what are you
I think
thinking?
the other option is not to accept, or, I mean, you can just simply have heard the report.
Right, but I'm wondering about it. I'm leaning towards, I would like to accept it with the caveat that we get the additional information updated into it. And then, for instance, we could have that at the next meeting as an information that it's, or we could delay till next meeting with the updated information that Dan has brought up and accept it then. But I'd like to, I mean, a lot of time has been spent on this, so I'd like to accept the report
Well,
at some point soon, so we can move on, because this dovetails, of course, with the economic recovery from the pandemic.
I was just going to say, I think that it should be a simple matter to just update the interview list with respect to the 2020 employment data. I'm not sure how often the data is updated by the feds. And every month? Okay.
But I think if I can interject, I think they're done. If we want to update it and put it as part of peak another time, or but asking them to do any more work on it, besides just update that, I think is too much. It's kind of like, and anyway.
It's a never-ending story.
I mean,
Right.
I want to be respectful, but I don't think this report is up to date, and I don't think we should accept it. I'm not asking the case board to do anything. The case board or somebody is bringing this to us and saying it doesn't. I wish it said on the agenda that we were considering adoption of the plan, because that would have changed, how I approach this today.
It's not adoption, it's accepted.
I wish that had
report.
been listed on the agenda as an item. It's listed as report discussion, right? So that's one thing. I don't think it's up to date in several ways. And the reason that it's not just that there's a wrong date in there, it's that a big chunk of the rationale for why we need to do this, so one piece of the rationale is that we have this large unemployment problem, and this is a way to address that unemployment problem. But that turns out to not be the case 11 months later at all. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the state, and we have not enough employees. It turns out to be exactly not true. So I would be very uncomfortable accepting a report that's, that's one of the building blocks of the rationale.
Amanda?
I guess my suggestion would be that because it wasn't listed as we would be taking any action, that we ask Sarah and Ellie and anybody else to make the updates that they already have, whether it's the list of interviewees or whatever, and then it comes back next month to say we want to adopt or accept, and then people have time to think further about it. If somebody wants to vote against accepting it, they can do that. But that will give everybody a little bit more time to get the fully updated, whatever they're presenting, fully updated, and then we can go from there. And in terms of, does the whole legislature have to? I don't have the answer to that. I mean, the rules say the legislature may vote, but I feel like a committee could vote to accept a report and the whole legislature doesn't have to. Or we could move it on. I mean, I'm thinking about the forest report. I don't think the whole legislature voted to adopt or accept that. It was just peak, yeah. So it could just be this committee that either votes to accept or not accept the report. So that's just my suggestion.
I just want to take a moment and acknowledge Dan's point that, yeah, the report was begun with anticipation of a lot of people being out of work, and where will the jobs be, or where could the needed jobs be, and how do we prepare people for that? And maybe now that particular question is less of an issue. and I don't have the data to know how many people, how is that unemployment data collected out of the workforce for now. But I think what is more true than ever is that contractors, developers, people trying to implement climate change policy and programs are looking for people, and there is a need for mechanisms that recruit, train, retain, reward those people. And maybe that means we end up growing the population of Tompkins County, or maybe that means we disseminate opportunities from, Ithaca area to more of the outlying communities within the county. But I think that need for trained, motivated people is only going to grow and is only going to serve the broad community development needs of the county. And I'd be curious to know what the city, I don't know, Annie, if it's appropriate to ask Luis to comment on this from a City of Ithaca perspective, but perhaps that could be a little relevant here too.
I just want to first, I'll get to Deborah, so I can't see on my screen here people who are in the meeting, but just they don't have their cameras off. Can we tell if Luis is here yet? Luis is here. Would you like to make any comments, Luis?
Yeah, hi, hello everybody. I agree with Sarah. I think definitely conditions have changed, but right now there is some urgency in the city to find more workers. I don't know what is the perception in the rest of the county, but in the city, we do not have enough trained people to take on the jobs that are coming. We're coming out of the pandemic. A lot of the population left the city. A lot of the people that were taking the jobs that we need right now are not within city boundaries or near the city. And we're having a lot of trouble trying to identify the people that will take on, for example, the next big project that we have, which is the retrofitting and electrification of 1,600 buildings in the city. We estimate that we're short about 400 trained workers for this program. To do that, we try to identify who was doing what, precisely what the report tried to do, and we contacted a number of organizations, and we realized that there was a lack of unifying council or authority, to the point that this morning, Mayor Myrick instructed me to move forward with creating a workforce development task force with the idea of bringing to the table the number of organizations that could help the city of Ithaca fill the gap in terms of workers. So I believe that the data, the numbers are perhaps even the least important part. I think precision is not the issue, it's direction, and the report indicates that the direction we need to go is to train people for future jobs. It is all about skating towards where the puck will be, not where it is. So I believe that at least on the side of the city, we absolutely need a unified workforce development program.
Deborah?
I hope it helps.
Yeah, thanks, Luis. That's consistent with what we've heard from the IAED in HED meetings, that regardless of what the overall unemployment figures are, there's this mismatch between the skill set that employers are looking for and the skill set that people looking for jobs actually have. So maybe the issue isn't necessarily the timeliness of the unemployment figures, but the emphasis on unemployment versus this mismatch in skills possessed and skills needed.
Especially in marginalized populations, which this addresses. And if I could just add even with the unemployment rate bouncing back much quicker than we thought it would, or the employment rate. I haven't seen the stats. I'm assuming it's similar to before, that there are quite a lot of people that have below living wage jobs, and these jobs are typically higher than living wage. So just helping families, and individuals out quite a bit by giving them much stable economic or much more stable income. Often they have health insurance and time off, things like that, versus a lot of people are cobbling together 2 or 3 jobs without benefits and often at minimum wage. And so these are really, what we're looking at is helping people get into careers. And often these are jobs where you can move up, where you can gain additional certification and training and move up. So, so how are you feeling about this, Dan? Are you feeling any different?
Yeah, and let me just say, and thank you for all the comments, for real. I'm not opposed to, training the green workforce. Talking about the process of the report and the report itself, if those are the things that we're building our recommendations on, then that's what I want. If we're going to adopt a report or accept a report, that's what I want to see in it. That's all I'm saying. I just want the case made for the things that are being said.
So could we bring it back next month with a couple of, we could just take the unemployment figures out if that's the issue and cite the mismatch of skills and yeah.
Yep, and add the additional
right.
conversations with IAED. So that's fine. I think that's a good way to go. So sort of following Amanda's protocols, which I really appreciate you sharing, you're going to refer it back to us, and then we'll bring it back next month with a request that it at least be accepted. I think accepted is appropriate. There's not really a plan to adopt here, but just accept and see then what the county wants to do with that.
Right, and I apologize that it could have been clearer on here, or I could have thought that out better in the agenda. So I apologize to everybody on that. I really respect, I want to just say I was a little bit part of well, I would say all my hesitancy in changing it was because I really respect the amount of work and time that the case has put into this. So thank you for being flexible with this, Sarah.
Thank you.
And for everybody's input.
Yeah, great working together. We got clarity, and we got something that we all feel good about doing next. So I think it's a very effective discussion, and I appreciate it. And Annie, moving on to the methane comments, Tony and Graffia was the one who I think was working with you on that. That's next on the agenda, and I wasn't sure if I needed to give a little summary of that, which I didn't prepare ahead of time, but I can do from memory. I sort of thought Tony might be here.
I didn't ask him to be. So if you wanted to give a minute or two summary, quick.
Sure.
Okay, yeah. Sure.
So
I'm just going to refer, hold on, I'm just going to refer people to, let's see.
It's page 75.
Page 75, and it's the comments to the New York DEC regarding oil and gas, their proposed oil and gas new regulations.
And
thank you.
Do you want to clarify what, this is just for people individually to sign, right? We're not taking committee action.
Right. So thank you, because it's always helpful to be clear. So this, I met with Tony and Graffia. So what we came up with was, rather than do a resolution coming from Peak or the legislature because it's in the comment period, they have to respond if they get comments from individuals rather than receiving a resolution. So that's why we decided to do a letter, and that and I said I would try and get as many legislators as we could to sign on to that. And because they will have to take into account our comments. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm one thing that I'm madly looking through my files, because these are the comments that are written in great detail for the DEC, legally, scientifically. I had made a slide deck for case, and I thought it was getting put into the packet. which kind of summarizes what this is about. But we're already, you know, sort of, you've been very generous with your time, so I'm not going to take any more time to find those. Maybe I'll send them around afterwards. But basically, DEC is amending its regulations to the oil and gas industry with the idea that methane leaks need to be addressed. And these are very granular level recommendations about how to regulate that industry, how to ensure that when leaks are identified, repairs happen promptly, how to ensure that super emitters, which apparently do exist. There are some wells that are responsible for the majority of the methane that's unintentionally going into the atmosphere from New York State, and that those get prioritized. So Tony Ingraffia, who's a professor at Cornell, emeritus, you know, long resume, deep credentials in understanding the industry and also the geology, is on the case board. So he crafted these recommendations that really also are politically aware of how to phrase things in such a way that the DEC will read, understand, and act. So that's my short story of what's representative on these two very technical pages that Tony's put together.
Thank you. And I will add, as folks may recall, a few years back that Tony Ingraffia and Bob Howarth were instrumental in collecting and bringing forth the information on methane to the state to help produce the ban on fracking. So really getting that information out there and providing the real science behind this to make the DEC and the state, in my estimate, do the right thing to protect us. Any questions, Deborah, or comments?
Yeah, Annie, I was wondering how many of us had already told you we would sign, because I thought that.
So far, I only have Deborah, Henry, Martha, and Shauna. So Dave, Amanda, and Dan, if you have any questions that would help you think about this anymore.
Well, no, this is good. Thank you, Sarah.
And you don't have to let me know now. You can let me know later. It's not.
Do you want an email or what do you?
If you just tell me, I'll put it on my list, and then what I'll do is for the folks that say they want to sign it, I will produce a letter. Since we're meeting more in public nowadays, I'll produce a letter and then put the titles of those people on it, and you can actually sign a piece of paper.
Ooh.
I think that it might be a little harder than parallel parking, but I think I can figure it out.
I did find my summary 4 or 5 slides, and Annie, I'll just email those to you now, and you can email those around to anybody who wants to take a look at sort of a plain English version of what Tony's got here.
Great, or if you want to do it right to Brittany well, no, to me, and I was gonna say Brittany or Katrina, but I'll do it because I'll put a little intro into it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything else for Sarah before? So Sarah, we're going to have next, Luis is going to do a presentation for us, but I know you've heard it before, but you're welcome to stay for that if you want. And thank you very much. I appreciate your time and your flexibility and jumping in to help with the presentation. And this is your first peak meeting, you said?
Yeah.
So great. We'll hope you come back again. And I didn't quite introduce Sarah totally, but she's the chair, current chair of our case board, and does quite a lot of work. And I hear you're going to be moving soon, so you're going to be busy the next couple of months, moving into, could I say where you're moving to, the general area, moving into Eco Village. So that's exciting. I think the 3rd neighborhood.
My constituent then. We'll talk.
Yeah. Thanks. Well, it's great to be here, and next time maybe that I visit, I will come in person, because it's so wonderful to see everybody, sitting together, and I wish I was there with you. So maybe next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah, very much. So next up, we have Luis Aguirre Torres. Hi, Luis. And
Hi.
I sometimes botch up your exact title the way it should be. So if you would like to, we're really happy that you're here. And if you could introduce yourself and tell us what you're going to talk about today.
Yeah, Luis Aguirre Torres. Yeah, my last name, it has too many R's, so, call me anything you want, that's fine. My title is Director of, what is crap? There's Director of Sustainability for the city of Ithaca. I go by King of Awesome too, so anything works really.
Awesome.
Anyway, I joined the city as Director of Sustainability 3 months ago. And my role is primarily focused on leading the charge with the Green New Deal, where we started by redefining a lot of what the Green New Deal is and identifying some very specific actions that we could start and get going. So here today I'm invited to talk about one of them, which has to do with international cooperation. So if that's okay, I don't know if you have any questions or anything that you would like me to address particularly, or if I should just proceed with the presentation.
I would say, oh, Deborah has something, and then I had a quick comment.
Yeah, I think that you're going to have to give your presentation because not everyone here has heard it. I think we heard it at the case board. And I think you made it at a city meeting, but not everyone's heard that. But I do have a particular question for you that I hope your presentation will address, and that is, what exactly are we committing to in terms of action if we participate in this pact that you and Cornell have already announced?
Okay, I'll address that in the presentation.
And if I could say one more thing, we're not asking for people to vote today. This is our initial intro into this. And I believe Katie's still here. So this is also to help, let our planning department know, because this would go across, the legislature, our planning department. So that we're gonna hear the presentation, and, if Katie wants to make any comments later or questions, I want her to make sure she's, of course, included in this. Katie, was there anything specific questions you had before Luis begins his presentation?
Nope, thank you though.
And if I could,
Dan has something.
I just appreciate that, what you just said, because I'm to understand that this is something that's coming to the legislature at some point. Is that what you just said?
It could.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful to know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you can confirm that you can see my screen.
Perfect.
Okay, great. So yes, last week was a very interesting week. Cornell University and the city of Ithaca announced the intention to create the Finger Lakes Energy Compact at a UN-sponsored event. I'll explain what the Energy Compact is and what it means to make a commitment as part of an Energy Compact. So right now, what is happening is that on one hand, we are at the beginning of what the United Nations is calling a decade of action. They're trying to get people to step up their commitments to reduce greenhouse gases, as stated in the nationally determined contributions, which in the case of the United States were increased to reducing 50% of greenhouse gases by 2030. Despite what the US did and other 58 countries did, the United Nations feels that there is a need to increase ambition. Otherwise, we are at risk of not meeting the objectives of the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Climate Agreement to reduce greenhouse gases. So right now, the United Nations is
Wait,
yeah?
Hold on. you're talking a little bit fast in the regards that it's a little bit hard to hear in the room. Are people able to understand or understand what Louise is talking? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'll try to speak slowly. I do speak fast. That's kind of in my nature. I apologize for that. So anyway, the United Nations is calling for action, and they are calling on subnational governments and academic institutions, non-profit organizations to step up ambition and go beyond. For example, if you are a local government, to go even beyond to what the state or the federal government are doing to reduce greenhouse gases. So what the UN is proposing is that they can, take you through a whole process in which you understand what it means to ratify your commitment to reduce greenhouse gases before the United Nations. Right now, the city of Ithaca and Cornell University are in the process of identifying which part of our ambition goes beyond what the state and the federal government of the United States are doing, and identifying ways in which we would monitor and report on this so we can implement series of actions. Right now, the proposal is before the United Nations, the United Nations Energy Program, to be specific, who are reviewing everything that we send them and in order to allow final registration. So what we did last week was a preview of our commitments and the initial process to register with the UN. What we are trying to create is a multi-stakeholder energy compact. And what that means is we are not only local government, we are not only academic institutions or civil society organizations, we are a combination of all of them. And what we are trying to do is to commit to fight climate change by reducing greenhouse gases in a definitive way, and also in a way that could be replicated in other parts of the state. So last week, what happened was on Tuesday, the mayor of the city of Ithaca presented before the United Nations, together with the mayors of a number of small cities in the countries of Gambia, Morocco, and China. And we presented our commitment, and we presented what we are doing in the city of Ithaca and Cornell University as a way of expressing our commitment to reducing greenhouse gases. This was on that day formally accepted, and that led to a second presentation that occurred on Thursday at 10 a.m., where in a closed session, a video from the mayor introducing the Finger Lakes Energy Compact was shared with the countries that signed to the Paris Agreement, and that made it officially accepted in a preliminary form to be part of what the United Nations calls a Decade of Action Energy Compact. This work is supported by UN Energy, and then at 11:45, UN Energy and the city of Ithaca and Cornell University presented to the entire world what our commitments are and what the Finger Lakes Energy Compact are. At the end of the day, what we're trying to create is a group of governments and academic institutions that are interested in going beyond what the state and the federal government are doing. We are doing it in the case of Ithaca entirely based on our commitments from the Green New Deal. What we are committing to do, we're just formalizing that commitment before the United Nations. Cornell University is doing the same. Neither of us is implementing anything that we did not plan last year or the year before even. In the case of Cornell, they are just going with the strategy that they had for emissions reduction. So we are not really committing to anything new. We're just doing it at a different scale. Perhaps the only commitment that the city made on Thursday was to work with developing countries, and in particular, we're going to work with this small city in Gambia, try to share our knowledge and experience and ways in which we believe they could unlock financial flows to help them implement greenhouse gas mitigation actions. So right now, the Finger Lakes Energy Compact is committing to this. This is the actual text that was submitted to the United Nations. So what we're saying here is that we do recognize the need to increase the scale and speed of our actions necessary to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 7, which means we want to help the world increase access to renewable energy in an affordable way. We suggest that the Finger Lakes Energy Compact will serve as an ambitious agenda between now and 2030, and committing to advance the different targets part of the Sustainable Development Goals. And we're going to do that by implementing very specific and tractable actions. The Energy Compact, it is a living document. The expectation is that after 1 year, we'll review our commitments and we'll decide if we are on pace to meet our goals or if we can actually increase ambition. Examples of what the city submitted, I cannot speak for what Cornell is submitting.
Luis,
yeah, sure.
Hold on for a second. We lost power in our building for a minute. I don't know if the legislature is with us anymore.
Oh, all right.
I'm looking at the list. It doesn't look like they're on here anymore.
Oh, that's cool. Thanks for letting me know. I could have been talking for like 6 hours and then start again.
What's going on with power to that building? This is multiple times that I've heard it's been interrupted.
The meeting's still on, yeah.
The meeting is still on?
Hey, Brittany, can people hear us right now in the legislature?
Terry, this is Brittany up in the legislature. I'm still here. The main screen is being rebooted.
Okay, so the committee can hear us and everything?
No, not at this time.
Okay, all right. So we'll pause here, I guess. And yeah, when everything's back up and running, let us know and Luis can keep going.
Okay,
Yeah.
It shouldn't be too long. Hopefully just a couple minutes.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
So Terry, now that nobody's listening, like, how are they treating you there? Are they treating you okay?
Oh, they're the best.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
Yeah, you messed up by working for the city. You should have worked for the county.
Yeah, well, I won't say much about that. I don't know if there is an answer that can work.
There's still time, Louise. You can come over.
You're still hiring?
Sure. We'll figure something out.
All right, that sounds good.
And that was a strange power surge we just had.
It seems like there's a power reliability and quality issue to your building. Is that being looked into?
Yes, it is, Sarah.
Good to hear.
Yeah, it's not something our facility staff is super pumped about, that's for sure.
Katie, I have another meeting that, like, I can be like 15 minutes late, but not much longer.
Sure.
I was hoping to be done by 3, so I'll just go through it kind of quickly. And I think Terry is completely up to speed with everything that we're doing. Probably, I don't know if Terry, would you be okay with probably trying to answer some general questions if they come after I'm gone?
About the compact?
Yeah.
I can try. If you send me your slide deck real quick, Luis, and I can just review things real quick.
All right.
And it looks like we're starting to get back the folks upstairs. I don't know if they can hear us yet.
It's on your way now, Terry. So while we come back, I think in general, what we are really trying to do is to see if everybody in Tompkins County can be part of this energy compact without going beyond what they are already committing to do. Just formalizing in a different language, international language, what is it that we're trying to do and the time frame in which we're trying to achieve it. And I believe that sharing that with the United Nations, if it is according to the level of ambition that they expect, they will authorize us to be an energy compact. And what that means is that we would be showcased, we would be used perhaps as a blueprint with other small governments. And then, oh, I believe that we're back. So Annie, can you hear us back there in the building?
That was great. We just heard your summarizing. That's actually great for us all to hear.
Okay. So actually, if you don't mind, I'll just continue like that, and I will try to repeat what I said and try to summarize. So once again, the problem is that all the countries that signed the Paris Agreement are not increasing ambition. Between the Paris Agreement 5-6 years ago and today, there's been new studies, and they determined that we don't have as much time as we thought. Greenhouse gases are really endangering the human species. Right now, if we don't do something, we're going to die. It's just as simple as that. So they are asking countries to increase ambition, but there are political and economical barriers for big countries to do that. China and the United States, they want to do it, but they are unable to do it at the speed that is required. So the United Nations is calling on subnational governments and some other institutions to increase ambition. If you can do it in your own piece of turf, probably others will pay attention and see how you're doing it. So what we're trying to do is to become an example for the US and everybody else in the world, and show them how we can do it. And I believe that the scale of Tompkins County is ideal for that. We don't have that huge of a population. The economic activity is reasonable. It's not just the one thing. And I believe that if we were to present in combination the commitments that each municipality and the county are doing right now to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, that would be enough. We formalize the language, we come in together, and then after that, we just, after registering, we will be exposed once again to other small countries or small subnational governments doing similar stuff, trying to be creative and innovative, not only in the way we use technology or the way we work with the community, but also in the way we unlock financial flows and the way we attract investment to help us do what we need to do. And on top of all that, if we are registered as an energy compact, then we have access to funding from multilateral organizations. We could get funding from the World Bank. We could get funding from the Global Environment Facility. We can get funding from the Korean Green Bank, which are the three largest funders of greenhouse gas mitigating actions. And before anybody asks, because that's normally a question that comes up, why would any of those organizations help the United States, one of the richest countries on earth, to do this? And the reason is they want to identify a blueprint. They want to identify a way of doing things. For example, the city of Ithaca calculated that we need about $2 billion to implement the Green New Deal. So for the United States, it's a huge number, but we believe that we can get that money and actually do what we need to do. Now imagine a small town in Gambia. Imagine some place in Central America or Southeast Asia. It would be very difficult for them. But if we manage to crack this one, and we manage to identify the way we can implement these actions at the lowest possible cost, and we redefine collaboration with philanthropic, private, public organizations, then there might be a recipe for the entire planet to follow and actually help reach the goals of the Sustainable Development Agenda and also the Paris Agreement. So that's the reason we want to create an energy compact, and that's the reason. And one final thing, and then, of course, I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. The reason we did it in such a rush, because we presented this a month ago and we decided to move forward with it, was because there is 3 stages that you need to follow to be part of an energy compact. One of them is to present at the thematic forums, the ministerial thematic forums that occurred last week. Last week was a UN event where they gather anybody who's anybody regarding greenhouse gas emissions mitigation in the world, and they had a conversation. So we were part of that conversation. We needed to do that. But now that we're part of that, we may be considered to be part of the high-level dialogue on energy, which is only for those who signed to the Paris Agreement. And now, because of what we did last week, we are considered one of those entities that are committed to help meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. But between now and September, which is when that happens, we can expand the compact. It can go beyond the city of Ithaca and Cornell University, and it could include the entire county, the entire economic region if we wanted to. So I'm here presenting this as an option, presenting this, asking you to consider being part of the energy compact, being part of the global effort to fight climate change. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Deborah?
Yeah, thanks, Luis. My feeling about this is, as I understand it, it doesn't require a lot more work than what we've already committed to. One of the reasons that I think Annie and I wanted you to come today and explain this is so that our Department of Planning and Sustainability leadership could hear the proposal and assess whether or not it adds anything to their work plan and whether they can fit it in. And you mentioned that you've had a lot of back and forth with Terry. So I guess I would like to hear from Katie or Terry or Megan or all of them what they think about this, because it's really, to my mind, up to them.
And if I could just add, this is the first time I think 3 of our committee members are hearing this too. So any feedback from them and our planning department.
Well, I still don't honestly feel like I really understand what we're committing to. I just, it still feels very high level to me, and maybe that's all there is to it. But just to say that you're going to commit to doing more than what the state and federal governments are doing, I don't know. I guess I still would ask if Terry has time in his work program to dig into this a little more so we fully understand what we're signing on for.
Yeah, I can definitely do a little bit more digging and talk with Luis. I mean, the county already has its goals laid out, and I think it's a question of whether those are sufficient or whether it's going beyond those. So I'll talk with you, Luis, and come back with something a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't see how we can make a decision for those of you who are actually going to have to do the work. I don't want to commit you to something you're not comfortable with. And yeah, that's just my thought. I mean, I know we don't have as much time as we thought we did. And I know that we have to raise the bar high. But I don't know if our current plans are enough.
What I know of the current plans is that they are more than enough. What the county is trying to do is way more than what most counties are trying to do in the entire country. And in conversations with Cornell about exactly the same thing, where it would increase their workload, we had a conversation with several conversations with UN Energy, and they said that they are devising a new way of reporting that they estimate will take about 8 hours at the very end of the year, after a year of committing to do the reporting. They don't think it will be a burden to actually report. So that is the only increase. And they themselves estimated an 8-hour report that the county, the city, and anybody who's part of the compact will have to commit to. So we estimate that there is no need to commit beyond putting together this proposal and then executing the actions that you already are committing to, and then at the end reporting on those.
And I don't mean to sound like I don't think this is important. It's just that, we've been working in this space since about 1999, and there have been a lot of efforts to track and report, and some of them are great and pan out and really help everyone, and others frankly are not a great use of staff resources. So I think we need to tease that out and make sure that we're putting our limited staff in the most important places for this critical issue.
Yeah, of course.
Luis, if I could ask, what's the timeline? I know there was a time or a deadline before to sign on for your, before we missed that deadline because of course we needed to bring it back to this committee and the legislature. So, but did you say there's another timeline to sign on, time, like by September or something like that? Is that correct?
September 10th, to be specific, yeah. So we have time.
Well, so Terry's gonna try and look into this and talk with you more, and then Katie will be off at our next, just looking for our agenda here for this committee. Katie will be off starting on the 26th, which is the date of our next meeting, and August 23rd. I don't know when our August meeting is. But anyway, so we'll do what we can during this period, and we'll keep talking about it. Is there any other questions or comments? Deborah?
Yeah, just said if there is a way to do this without substantially adding to the commitments that we've already made, I would be very much in favor of it, especially if it gets us money to do the things we need. There was something else, but it's just now floated away. So,
Right, I would imagine that would be, you know, I don't want to speak for our planning department, but I would imagine that would be part of their consideration. Like, is the amount of work that they do, you know, for this, you know, looking at, for instance, the funding sources, would that help us at all? So anyway, we look forward to.
I do have one more question, Annie, if you don't mind.
You've had a lot of questions today, Deborah. If that
I know,
could be
I'm filling
your
in for-
second to last one.
I'm
Okay,
filling in
thank you.
for an absent member. If we sign on to this and somehow or another fail to meet a commitment, what happens to us? I mean, do we have to do the walk of shame? I'm trying to understand what the downside is.
Oh, no. I understand what you're saying. What the United Nations is trying to do is to inspire people to go beyond what they're trying to do. And with the expectation that not everybody will be able to achieve this. What they want is to try. So what we're going to do in a year is to sit down. Because being an official energy compact comes with technical assistance from UN Energy. So if we do not manage to meet any of our commitments, they will sit down with us and help us figure out why and how we can actually do that. So it is beneficial if we don't do it. It's just normally people never ask me that question, but that is a conversation that we did have with them.
Okay, thank you.
They don't kick you out or anything. You just, they suggest ways of implementing something different.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? Thank you very much, Louise, for giving us this presentation. I know you've done it a number of times, and I know you're really busy. And Katie and Megan and Terry and whoever else is there, thank you for staying through this committee meeting. I just wanted to just put this out there that, looking at for each meeting, feel free to look at the agenda and ask if you need to, to stay for different things. Same thing for Lisa and Amy. Want to make sure I want to be cognizant of your time. So I think we're done with that discussion. So thank you, Louise, very much. I really appreciate it. And going on next, do any committee members have any reports? Oh, I'm sorry, well, he's off, but thanks to the king of awesome, but okay. Do any committee reports or Amanda?
Yeah, just letting you all know that you should have in your mailbox the clean boating map and guide, which the Water Resources Council put together and that we gave funding for. So check it out. They're being distributed around the lake. And when you're out there boating, follow these procedures. Thank you.
I just want to say I'm a big map fan, and there's not a lot of paper maps produced anymore. And this is a really good one. I haven't looked, I'm going to spend a lot more time with it, but I realized that I think it's the only map I've ever seen of Cayuga Lake, of just Cayuga Lake. Like that's not a subject I've ever seen before. So.
Yeah, and it's got the, depths and, places you can, launch your boat. It's got everything. really very, very well done. And we should thank the Water Resources Council for this.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Dan. So if folks didn't have anything else, I had one quick thing. So I was thinking of asking Cornell Cooperative Extension to come and report next, hopefully in July, maybe August. And I was wondering if folks wanted to just either tell me now or send me an email. Are there certain questions or topics you would like the CCE to address? Okay, if you think of things we can, because we haven't had, and go ahead, Dan.
Were you thinking of having them report on programs that we fund or something beyond?
I was thinking that, yeah, the programs that we fund, because sometimes in the budget, there, it's not always either enough time or, if we're looking at this year having something abbreviated, or then they might not report as much, but I'm thinking probably CCE might this year, I'm thinking, but also I'm looking at, there's sometimes where we've had questions of them and that they're either not able to answer or they need to follow up. So if we had questions now, then we all would have more information by the time, the budget questions come around.
I think it's a good idea. I'm just thinking right now that maybe it would be helpful if we could get a list soonish of all the programs of theirs we fund. They could probably provide that for us, and then
That all the programs that we fund?
or them,
Mm-hmm.
or CCE, and then that would help me think about what I want to hear in this meeting, because we fund a lot of stuff for them and they're also big talkers. So you know what I mean? Like we're gonna need to narrow them down if we want to bring them, which I think is a good idea. That's just my thought right now.
And isn't it true that the bulk of the money that we give them goes into their general operating fund, which creates a less than desirable level of transparency?
Yes and no. They have what they call the core programs that we fund. Yeah. So it's not everything, but yes, that's mostly true.
Okay. So that anything else from Lisa or Amy that about them coming here to talk with us? Any issues with that or any questions? Or, you can ask me later if you get a chance.
I'm going
to
to
put you on the spot.
Speaking with Ken, I think it's this week, he's going to be providing me with a little overview of what he intends to bring forward. So I guess I don't see any concerns.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the committee today? Well, there was a lot of presentations we had, including a power outage or something right in the middle of it. And so I think we did really great on time. I appreciate everybody being really flexible for our first in-person / hybrid meeting. And especially, for all the staff, our administration, for the county, Lisa and Amy, and all of our clerks, Katrina, Kathy, Brittany, Michelle, and all our technical staff, and Dominic, all the people and Jim up there, if he's still up there, all the people, I don't think people realize all the people that are behind the scenes that really make this happen and that are helping with the county's commitment to continue with the transparency that we have been able to find while doing Zoom meetings. So to continue that on. So thank you very much. And thank you, everybody. And I'll call the meeting adjourned. Do I need to have a vote on this? I can't remember. I will